This is an insane election. You had a major candidate pull back. You have the vice president stepping up, gaining the presumptive nomination. And then you have, correspondingly, this guy who looked like he was on a glide path to land in the White House, all of a sudden in a tailspin and desperate to find some kind of strategy to go after her because she is so popular. What can you tell us about what's happening in the Trump camp and how they are trying to manage their candidate, Gary Dietrich?
Trump and the GOP. All right, so here's where we are right now. Let's take the snapshot today, okay? So here's where we are. A week from today, the DNC kicks off in Chicago, all right? We've had 2 solid weeks where there's absolutely no question about it. Call it a honeymoon, call it a love fest, call it what you want. Kamala Harris has been riding high. I mean, 30,000 foot high. And we know that. The Tim Walz, pick for VP, it's still getting some question marks, no question about it, even in her own party to some degree. But you know what? That seems to be settling down. They look like they're going to be okay. So first of all, on the D side, before I get to the R side, Mark, the big question mark for Kamala Harris, as you, I'm sure, are well aware, is twofold. Kamala, and this is coming across the spectrum, by the way, from the media. Kamala, we need 2 things from you. A, we need some airtime, okay? We need an interview. We need a presser. We need something from you live with us. Because so far, as you know, Mark, it has been nothing but scripted events, rallies, et cetera, et cetera. And the media is getting antsy about this. And there's even some on the left side of the media picture starting to call her out for that. And then the second thing is specific policies. I mean, the bottom line is, even on her own campaign webpage, up until at least yesterday, we'll check today, there is, the bio, the this or that, but there are no specific policy prescriptions or all the rest of that. So those 2 things are going to have to come, Mark, and they're going to have to come pretty quick, or there's going to start being some backlash on the love fest. So
let me just. I want to get to the Republicans, which is where we started, and you went right to Kamala Harris. Okay, that's fair, but I will push back on you on this for a second. And this is when I push back on you here. I'm kind of asking, because this is sort of more your area than mine. So I hope you'll take it in that light. From where I sit, I go, I don't know. You know who wants her to sit down and talk to the media? The media wants that. And that's the echo chamber of the media talking about how come she's not done an interview with Lester Holt? How come she hasn't done, Lester Holt wants that interview. I don't hear that from the 30,000 people who are showing up to see her. I say if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You can go a couple more weeks without sitting down. Literally, the people who care about you sitting down for an interview are all people who do interviews for a living, the media. So I would say ignore them, Kamala Harris, and you do your thing. Now, the second, and again, I want your impression on that, but the second thing I would say is you may be right about policy specifics and those that have to be at least laid out in some way on her website, et cetera. I'm not suggesting that she evade that, although, that said, the last guy who she's running against now, Donald Trump, isn't exactly a policy wonk. He calls everybody names, he rides on charisma, and he won the White House that way. So again, I love how we default for the Democrats. They have to have policies, they have to meet with the media, blah, blah, but they give the pass to Trump to just go ahead and make up funny nicknames for people. Now, go ahead.
Well, all right. As you know, Mark, I give passes to no one, including Donald Trump, the former president. So don't get me wrong here. I was just kind of getting the D stuff out of the way because I felt probably today we're going to spend more time on the R side of the ledger. So that having been said, here's the deal. I think it would behoove the vice president to go ahead and do these interviews. Here's why. Yes, they 10,000, 30,000, whatever the thousands are. And yes, Trump's absolutely wrong. None of these crowds have been AI'd to anybody's knowledge. Those people are the hardcore base. That's the ones that go to these rallies. What she needs to win over, of course, is that middle. And those people do want to know where she stands. How close is she going to be to President Biden on the whole Israel deal? Where is she going to be on the border issues? Where are we going on the economic policies? Give me some kind of specifics on what can you do better or different on this whole inflation thing. So those things are important. It's important not to negate those. All right. Now, politically, in terms of just strategy, you want to avoid that stuff as long as you can. Why? Because there's always a chance that you slip up, right? There's screw ups that happen on these interviews and in debates and all that. So her people, no doubt, think this is absolutely spectacular. Here's what I think is going to happen, Mark. This week is going to be kind of another placeholder week, and then we get into the DNC, which, just like the RNC, they are, by design, gargantuan love fest by the base. So that's going to happen next Monday. By a week from Thursday, she'll deliver her acceptance speech, and then truly it's game on in a more traditional sense. So I would say, really, Mark, it's 2 weeks from today, after the DNC, is when, if those questions haven't been answered about policy and interviews and giving the voters some kind of more substance, that's when that pressure is going to really build. All right. So that's the Kamala Harris, Tim Walz DNC picture. Now, for Trump, his people are desperate for him to get back on message. As you pointed out, he sort of specializes in, the mud wallowing. Put on the gloves. Let's go for it, right? Let's get inside the octagon and start slugging away. Right now, honestly, if you look at all the analysis from right and left center, what Donald Trump and his campaign did exceptionally well pre the Biden dropout was staying on message, and it was working for him. And the personal attacks were unnecessary, and they weren't needed, and they weren't wanted. I mean, they weren't wanted by his own campaign. They weren't wanted by the people who support him. They weren't wanted by, the people who are trying to figure out, that 5% in the middle that's going to sway this thing. So that's where you're starting to hear us out of legislators in Washington, in the House and the Senate. People in his own party said, look, Donald, enough already with all that stuff. Get back to the policies that we know we pull well on: immigration, the economy, even foreign policy areas, certain of them. Let's get back to those. That's what you're hearing.
It's interesting, and that makes total sense. And of course, you're right. The chorus of "let's get back to the issues" is deafening out of everybody. In fact, it's not just people like Kevin McCarthy who came on this morning. I think on Fox News or on CNN or something. He said he's got to get back to messaging. It's like just one more guy saying it who's a political figure. But more importantly, perhaps to Trump, is the big donors are saying it. They said it over the weekend to him. They said, hey, what am I most excited about? I'm excited about the message that we have. They're trying to send him these various indications that that's what he needs to get back to. But, I'd say that, I don't mean to dwell on it too much, Gary, but it does seem to be almost like a tragic flaw, like one of those Greek tragedian figures, who just has something they can't get away from. I don't think he speaks about policy very well. I don't think he really understands policy on a lot of things. He's a showman, and he puts on a show, and he calls people names, and he kind of rides the wave. I think, and he's charismatic. I mean, I've always said that from the very start, and I've got no appetite for him, but he is charismatic. And I don't know that he can really he'll have to be wedded to the prompter, the way he was for the last 2 weeks of the Clinton campaign against him. If he does that, then he can do it. I mean, do you agree with me on that? I think if you leave him to riff, he doesn't riff around policy.
Well, I'll tell you interesting, Mark, because just go back 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and look at some of the things that he handled well. And some of these were prompter developed, you're right, but he would oftentimes go off the cuff on those. But he still didn't go into attack dog mode. This is my take on Trump. When he's doing well, he will follow the script. In other words, the script from his campaign. And every campaign is doing everything they can to keep their candidate, doesn't matter if it's Republican, Democrat, Independent, keep them within their lane, right? Keep them inside the guardrails. Trump was doing that, and he was doing it successfully. When he seems to really struggle and get into that New York City street fighter, street brawl kind of thing, is when he starts struggling. When his poll numbers have been dipping, there's no question about it. We kind of expected this, right? When Joe Biden dropped out, everybody knew there was going to be a bump because that is the sitting president, was struggling so much. So what you're seeing right now, New York Times Siena poll comes out over the weekend. In the key blue wall battleground states of Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, all of a sudden now, Harris is up on Trump by 4 points. Now, a lot of people expected she would get that kind of a bump, but that's the reality of it. in the national polls where Biden had dropped. Sometimes they're down to 5 or 6 points or more below Trump in the national polls. Now they're even Steven, or sometimes, it depends one or the other. They're a half a point or a point ahead. So that's where we are. That's made Trump reportedly very incensed. It should be expected. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if her poll numbers, Mark, go up even a little bit more during the DNC week next week. And then it's game on. Then we have that 2.5 month sprint through Election Day. And that's when we're really going to begin to see, do her poll bumps stick or do they not?
It's interesting you talk about the polls because there's just one part of the polls I'd like to focus on. We talk about them a lot here. People give me a hard time because I do try to watch the polling, particularly in these swing states. But one part of a poll that I wanted your reaction to related to the economy, because we always hear about, Republicans have this, I think it's not a deserved reputation of handling the economy well or whatever. And Trump is kind of, let me tell you, the economy was better under me. I mean, everything's better under him. We know you get that bluster. But more to the point, I mean, to be fair, they are associated with handling the economy more responsibly. Again, we can debate whether or not that's actually true. Most voters, according to this latest polling, say they trust Vice President Harris to handle the economy better than they do former President Trump. This is a poll released this morning from the Financial Times and the University of Michigan Ross School of Business. Harris leads Trump 42-41 in the August poll when respondents were asked which candidate they trust to handle the economy, regardless of whom they plan on supporting in November. This is the first time that a Democratic candidate has inched ahead of the GOP candidate on the economy question since this polling began last year. Thoughts?
Right. Well, I think those numbers are getting a lot of headlines today. It's one poll. Again, I associate it, Mark, with the general bump she's getting. I mean, you look at really pretty much across the board, any poll, she's gone up. But this has particularly got to be concerning to the GOP because the two big issue areas that, man, I'm telling you, the Trump campaign has been crowing about, and rightfully so, because it didn't matter who was doing the poll, right, left, center. He was up by double digits in every poll on two issues: the economy / inflation and immigration. Now, if these numbers stick, if Harris's numbers look like they're going to be even with Trump's, let alone better, this is going to be very worrying to the GOP. So again, let's see where that ends up in about 2-3 weeks. But right now, no doubt the Harris people have to be very happy about that. Here's the other big potential sand trap for Harris. She's going to go back out on the campaign trail with Joe Biden. Now, there's going to be a lot of people. I can't wait to hear, for example, I can't wait to hear what our dear friend James Carville says about this. The advisability of going out on the campaign trail with the guy that Carville was saying, you got to throw him overboard 6 months ago. Because there is a danger in that, all right? What she's had so far that's been very interesting to me, Mark, is quite a bit of daylight between her and the sitting president. There's been very little affiliation or assignment of blame, so to speak, though the GOP has tried to do it, of course, between her and Biden. So if she goes back out, what she's scheduled to do starting this week in Maryland and elsewhere with the sitting president, you just have to wonder, is that going to begin to, oh, geez, that's right. She's been there, his right-hand person for 3.5 years. Oh, yeah, right. Well, she must have the same policies as Biden, and I don't feel great about that. So that's going to be very interesting to watch, Mark, in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. And I'm thinking back to Gore and Clinton. Am I remembering this right? Because there was a...
You're right.
Yeah.
You're
there was
right.
a sense that Gore shouldn't appear on stage with Clinton necessarily, even though Clinton had presided over all of this, economic prosperity. But there's always that weird thing, like you want the best of the candidate who, of the person who's on stage with you, but you don't want the stink of the person who's on stage with you.
Yeah, that was a very, very strategic move, by the way, by the Gore campaign. And they made no bones about it internally. They were not going to put Bill on the stage with Al. And after he lost, Bill Clinton famously gave one of those kind of turn the head sort of, well, maybe that wasn't the best decision, because he claimed that at least in strategic parts of the country and with certain demographics, particularly black voters and others, he could have helped get Gore over the top. And this is the strategy apparently for Harris. They're going to deploy Biden, particularly in Pennsylvania, where he has pulled strong. But remember, before he dropped out, he was even behind in Pennsylvania. So I think this is a semi-high risk move by the Harris people, and I'm going to be really interested to see how it turns out.
You know, one of the things that Trump's people, I don't know to what extent Trump's involved, are doing well, if I can pay them a compliment. I try to be objective. Obviously, I'm partisan. As I say, I've got no appetite for Trump and his people who have thrown in with him. And I think I mean, it's full of corruption. It's full of disregard for some of the underpinnings of this country. I'm talking about January 6th. It's that kind of thing. But anyway, and overthrowing the election. But let me just pay them a compliment. I think one of the things they've done well is they've gotten Trump into some of these other areas of platforming that don't represent legacy media, meaning he's not just showing up on cable or the Today Show or calling and wherever. He's doing these things. But, you know, when you have Elon Musk on your side, you have an ability to get your message out in other ways. And now he's doing a meeting with Musk on Twitter, right? He's doing a Twitter Spaces, and Musk is in deep with him. He's endorsed him. He's also pledged money, although, you know, the amount of money is a little bit in question. And I'm curious as to two things. A, if you think this will be effective, this Twitter Spaces reaching out in this way, that technology, if it is effective. And also how, I guess, Trump will come over to the electric car world. I mean, he's been so anti-electric cars, anti-battery. He's got the whole, I mean, Trump is all over the road on this, but the road is all combustion engines. He does not go on the electric car road. Tell me how he makes that work in the conversation with Musk.
Well, I'm going to be shocked if there's much time spent tonight on electric cars with Musk and with Trump. No, seriously. And I think I see the Musk-Trump thing as very symbiotic, as always happens in politics, right? I mean, I think Musk, we know he has no love lost for the state of California, for Gavin Newsom, its governor. I mean, he's made that clear. Those feuds have been well documented. You know, Musk is moving his operations. He's made no bones about it to Texas. He's kind of a free spirit, free market, you know, hey, leave me alone kind of a guy. Let me see if I can get to Mars, you know, all the rest of it. I mean, it's quite remarkable. To me, the interesting thing about this is going to be, and by the way, the Harris campaign is doing a lot of their own outreach, as you know. To me, I'm wondering, Mark, if 2024 is going to be when the political analysts and the political sociologists and everybody start writing about this in the next 5-10 years. Was 2024 the election where the so-called new media tipped the scale in favor of one candidate or another? Because it's been the legacy media. It's been, we call it now the linear media, broadcast-wise, as opposed to the online media. Of course, the print media, most people think is dinosaurs. But, you know, you still got the old gray lady and the rest of them, although most people read that stuff online now. But the point of the matter is, I think I'm super intrigued to see if just Elon Musk having him on, Mark, regardless of whether all, you know, the 20-somethings even watch it. Oh, Elon's having him on? Okay, well, I need to take a look at Trump then. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It makes total sense. In fact, that's kind of what I'm saying. There's a shimmer to the rebellious aspect of Elon Musk, and maybe that shimmer gets onto Trump as well, because he's also a rebel. No Contendo said, how does Trump serve two masters, oil industry and Musk? I think the same way that politicians in this country serve multiple masters all the time. I don't see it as a real issue. Musk is a narcissist like Trump, says Jose. It's going to be a sham interview. I mean, I think it'll be a softball interview, but it's something. And increasingly, these softball interviews, Trump just, you know, riffs away on whatever, and you might end up with some real nuggets. But I'd also say, last thing on Musk, because people go, well, why do we care about Musk? You should care about Musk. Musk runs so much of what the United States is involved in from the standpoint of space programs, from the standpoint of battery storage. Musk is way, way, way important to the United States of America, which is one of the reasons it's so hard to regulate him. But he's benefited immensely from these tax benefits. And Gary, you can talk about the subsidies that he's benefited from. And once he's squeezed California dry, now he's ready to book it to Texas.
Well, and I think the thing about it, you're hitting on the real rub of this thing, Mark, and that is, does Elon Musk really care all that much whether Donald Trump wants to continue to go down to Alabama and say, don't take away our diesel pickups? I mean, I think that he knows the political world. He knows that certain things have to be said. I mean, Kamala Harris has now come out and her campaign's made no bones about it. She's quote unquote changed her mind on fracking. Though she's real big on climate change concerns. For Pennsylvania's sake, let's just cut to the chase. You cannot be anti-fracking and want to win some of these key states, and her campaign knows that. So, everybody. I'm not trying to paint everybody with the same brush, but there is a broad brush to this, and
Sure.
and so I think Musk understands that. He doesn't expect Trump to ride around in a Tesla during his campaign, or even a Cybertruck, and he knows why he can't. But on balance, he feels like I'm going to get a better shot at the way I like to do entrepreneurial freewheeling business under Trump. I think that's his basic take.
I would agree with that because Trump is all transactional. Just wet Trump's beak and you'll be fine. Gary, those are my words, not yours. Gary, I love our time together. Thank you for spending a part of Mondays with us. You can find Gary Dietrich across the CBS television network and across California on CBS stations, also across iHeart Radio from coast to coast and around the world. Love your takes, and I look forward to next week. What a wild ride, pal. Thank you so much. Gary Dietrich, everybody.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mark.
All right. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.